The wild regions of Australia are a dangerous place, teeming with lethal animals. Unfortunately, not everyone is lucky enough to avoid the perils of this diverse continent, and some who venture too close pay for those mistakes with their lives. Today, we take you to northeast Australia, where a gathering of friends ended with the death of a 43-year-old woman. These are the terrifying last moments of Beryl Ruck, devoured alive by a massive crocodile. Welcome to Animal Sentence. It was Saturday, December 21st, 1985, in the far north of Queensland, Australia, and a small group of friends was preparing for a pre-Christmas celebration. They didn't plan on doing anything too extravagant. All of them had known each other for a long time and wanted to spend some time together before family gatherings absorbed them during the holidays. With this sentiment in mind, the group organized a barbecue. At 11 p.m., the friends met at the butterfly farm with steaks and coolers filled with drinks. It was a hot day, and even at 11 p.m., the group could still feel the heat. They lit the grill, and soon the sweet smell of cooking meat filled the air. Conversations and drinks flowed easily, and everyone was relaxed and carefree. They congratulated each other on another peaceful Christmas together and discussed plans for the new year. At 11:30 p.m., the 5 friends in the group decided to explore the forest. Their location was right next to the Queensland rainforest, and they had grown bored of sitting in one place chatting. The rest of the group had nothing to worry about. After all, there was plenty of human activity around the area, and the 5 were fully capable adults. Besides, they didn't plan on being out for long. They were just going to look around a bit before rejoining the group. Maybe they would see a koala or other wildlife. The 5 chose a trail and quickly delved into the thick blanket of the forest. Soon, they saw a walkway cutting through the jungle and decided to follow it. A few minutes of walking brought them to a private pier overlooking the Barat Creek, a waterway of the Daintree River. The view from the pier made their plans to return go out the window. The 5 friends sat on the pier and started a new conversation, enjoying the night air while talking and laughing. A single light pole hanging overhead provided them with enough light, and they were perfectly content with their current arrangement. 11:30 p.m. turned into midnight, but the conversation still hadn't slowed down. One of the 5, Maurice Mealings, suggested they get into the water to cool off. The weather was still warm and they had walked there, so it made sense that a dip in the creek was justified. The Daintree River is home to a growing population of crocodiles, and northeast Australia is commonly known as crocodile country. The friends knew this. They were all aware that their location was near the mouth of the Daintree, where the river opens into the Coral Sea. As the tides caused the waters to rise and fall, bull sharks swam into the river looking for any low-level animals that dared to tread the waters. Sharks were already terrifying enough, but crocodile attacks are 100 times more deadly than shark attacks. Sometimes sharks approach humans out of curiosity and get scared off by biting. Crocodiles, on the other hand, have one mission in mind when they approach their prey, and that is to kill. The group stayed where they were, but getting into the water was a tempting prospect. The tides were low, so the water was only a few feet deep, which ruled out the possibility of sharks. Additionally, the surface of the water was still, like a blank slate. There didn't seem to be any imminent danger, and it was easy for anyone to walk and wade in. If there was any danger, surely they could detect it and escape in time. With these thoughts in mind, Maurice strengthened his resolve and got into the water. He stayed near the edge, took a quick turn in the water, then quickly got out as if someone was chasing him. Though the night was hot, Maurice suddenly began to shiver. Being in the water filled him with a strong sense of dread. Every nerve ending in his body was tense, and goosebumps prickled his flesh. The worst part was that he couldn't even explain why he suddenly wanted to get out of there. Something just didn't feel right, and he couldn't say what it was. Trying to keep his emotions in check, Maurice told his 3 friends to stay out of the water. They were still chatting on the pier and were better off staying there for the rest of the night. Unfortunately, seeing Maurice in the water gave the rest of them the courage to dip their feet into the cool water. Considering how calm the water still was, the tide still low, and Maurice having just gotten in and out unharmed, they wanted to enjoy the nice water too. Any predator beneath the surface was indeed far away, and they could detect danger and get out quickly. Next into the water were friends John and Rob, followed closely by 43-year-old trader Beryl Ruck. John and Rob effortlessly entered the black, murky water and continued chatting near the pier, though they didn't want to go any further. Morris and his wife, Selina, remained safely on the pier, enjoying the view from there while Beryl waded in the water. It seemed like the perfect night, just 5 friends having fun. What could go wrong? Unbeknownst to the group, Maurice's intuition was right. A deadly beast was stalking them. In the darkness of the night and the stillness of the water, just out of reach of the lamp's soft glow, lay a massive crocodile. In the dark, the animal had no problem blending in with its surroundings. It remained hidden beneath the water's surface, far from the unsuspecting human eyes. Its movements were calculated not to stir the waters, and it had its sights set on the group as its dinner. Slowly, patiently, the predator approached its prey. John and Beryl were being hunted, and they didn't even know it. Suddenly, the night grew still. The insects and nocturnal animals scurrying through the rainforest fell silent, as if they knew what was about to happen, and held their breath in morbid anticipation. A chill ran down John's spine, and fear enveloped him like a cold blanket on an even colder day. It was the same feeling Maurice had just moments before. John wasn't sure what it was either. He knew he had to get out of the water immediately. He hurried toward the pier, reaching to grab the wooden post, but before he could even lift himself, the water exploded around him, and the force made him stumble and fall back into the water. The water rushed into his nose, mouth, and eyes. In his confusion and panic, he couldn't see what was happening, but his friends on the pier could, and what they saw before them was a horrifying sight. Before them was a massive crocodile, about 5 to 5.5 meters long, with its teeth sunk into Beryl's flesh. Her face was a mask of pure terror. Her eyes were wide open, and her mouth was agape as if she wanted to scream, but had suddenly forgotten how. The crocodile dragged her under the water's surface before she could even attempt to let out that scream. It was December 22nd, 1985, and Beryl Ruck had disappeared, never to be seen again. Beryl's friends were not only mentally and emotionally scarred for life, but they were also left with the heavy burden of telling others what had happened to the poor woman and the guilt of their actions. If only they had stayed at the farm with the others, or at least chatted until midnight before heading back, maybe she would still be alive. A few weeks later, a large crocodile was killed nearby. The crocodile was nicknamed Big Jim, and in its stomach, the arm of a woman was found. In 1985, DNA science was not fully developed, so it was assumed that the arm belonged to the 43-year-old trader, Beryl Ruck. Crocodile attacks are more frequent than shark attacks, because foolish humans constantly ignore all warnings and venture into crocodile territory. The tragic story of Beryl serves as an important lesson. Never swim in unfamiliar waters, especially not at night. And never mess with nature, because nature will not hesitate to bite back, leading you to your unfortunate animal sentence. An adventure-loving daredevil meets his final minutes in the most horrifying way imaginable. He was devoured by a 15-foot, 2,000-pound crocodile while on an adventure with a group of friends. These are the terrifying final moments of Hendrik Coetzee. Welcome to Animal Sentence. Hendrik Coetzee always knew death was coming for him. He often spoke of it, knowing his adventurous lifestyle was pushing him to his premature end. But his cravings for adventure overcame him. In his memoirs, he wrote of feeling a deep depression as soon as each expedition was over. He was only ever happy when he was alone, pushing himself to his limits and way beyond. Hendrik grew up in South Africa. He found school tedious and boring, but thrived in the arts. After graduating, he went traveling before joining the military. At the age of 21, he was back on the Dark Continent and was looking for adventure. In 1997, the mighty Zambezi River, bordering Zambia and Zimbabwe, was fast becoming a hotspot for thrill-seeking tourists. Outfitters set up bungee jumps and skydives over the awesome Victoria Falls. But most popular of all was whitewater rafting. As a cocky 21-year-old Hendrik, who had never kayaked or rafted a river in his life, landed himself a job with Peter Meredith's whitewater rafting company. After learning how to roll and ride a kayak in a swimming pool, Hendrik took to one of the world's most advanced commercial rivers. He guided tourists through Grade 5 rapids and quickly became a popular guide. Peter described Hendrik as having more balls than brains, and on one occasion, whilst the entire group portaged their rafts and kayaks around a deadly Class 6 rapid, Hendrik ran at it in his kayak without telling anyone. He barely made it through, but thought he was the bee's knees. Peter warned him he'd be fired if he ever pulled a stunt like that again. Peter and Hendrik became good friends. In 2004, they embarked on an epic adventure with a small team. The task was to follow the River Nile from source to sea. They paddled the 4,130 miles from Lake Victoria to the Mediterranean together. This preceded Hendrik's solo paddle of the Congo a few years later. The journey took him 5 months to complete. He survived being ambushed and hunted by cannibalistic Gombe tribesmen. He dodged hippos and crocodiles. He slept on the banks of the river, protected only by his bivouac and the flames of his fire. After returning home, Hendrik decided that it was time to settle down. This adventurous lifestyle couldn't last forever, and he was taking too many risks. He had met a girl and realized that there is perhaps more to life than adrenaline-filled expeditions. But these feelings weren't to last long. In 2010, an email pinged in his inbox. Two professional American kayakers, Ben Stokesbury and Chris Kobelik, wanted to navigate the Upper Congo River. They knew Hendrik was the perfect guide for the job. Hendrik stood fast on his original decision. No more kayaking or exploration, but he was happy to help them plan their route. He wrote a detailed itinerary for them, adding detail that only an explorer of his caliber would know. As he mapped out their journey, Hendrik felt that familiar restlessness return. The call of the wild echoed once more in his ears. After months of helping them plan their trip, Hendrik finally relented and succumbed to the promise of an epic adventure. The trio set out on the 2-month trip through the Congo's tributaries. They began along the Ruzizi River at the end of October 2010. They planned to be home by Christmas. Hendrik's girlfriend was looking forward to seeing him again after what he promised to be his final expedition. It turns out he was right. Whenever the three kayakers paused along the river to rest or make camp, they would speak with locals who lived on the riverbanks. They had an agreement with the International Rescue Committee, who helped refugees and rural communities. In exchange for some logistical help, Henry had promised feedback from locals. Upon speaking to one community, they were told that as well as needing clean water and education, they also needed help tackling a major crocodile problem. In the past 20 years, 125 people had been taken by this prolific predator. Henry and the other made a mental note of this comment. What they didn't know was the years of battles in the region between neighboring communities had resulted in more than 5.4 million people being killed. Most of these people had been dumped in the rivers. Most of these people had been eaten by crocodiles. As a result, these reptilian beasts had grown to enormous sizes and had a taste for human blood. On December 7th, 2010, the trio had been paddling for some time when they came to a sharp bend in the river. Although Ben and Chris were professional paddlers and well known in the world of extreme sports, Henry had to teach them how to kayak in the African wilderness. He taught them to regularly tap their kayaks to create noise, stay away from eddies where hippos might attack, and keep clear of sunbathing crocodiles on the riverbanks. On the day of the attack, the three of them had spotted a few 3-foot crocodiles on the muddy banks. They were harmless, and the trio glided by, admiring the natural scene from their plastic boats. If a larger croc was spotted in the water, protocol was for the three kayakers to come together and paddle as fast as they could to outrun the potential threat. So far, the journey had been broken up into hair-raising whitewater obstacles and calm, gentle stretches that meandered silently through the still African bush. Around the corner, the river was about 100 feet wide and flowed gently. The three men were paddling close to one another. They had to concentrate so that their blades didn't touch. Ben was slightly in front, Henry in the center, and Chris trailing a few yards behind. Ben's eyes darted from left to right as he scanned the waterways and sloping embankment for any sign of trouble. The water was so calm, with the only ripples emanating from the men's paddles. There were no telltale signs of predatory crocodiles or territorial hippos. Usually, they would spot the knobby protrusions of a crocodile's log-like head and two gleaming eyes just above the water surface. But today was different. Unbeknownst to them, something was stirring underwater. Something was stalking them from the murky depths. Nothing could have alerted them to this stealthy predator, not a ripple nor a bubble, until it was too late. Ben looked back over his shoulder to check the others were keeping form. As he did so, he saw an enormous crocodile silently emerge from the water just to Henry's left-hand side. Henry gasped at its sudden appearance and cried, "Oh my God!" It wasn't a cry of fear, terror, or desperation. It was more a matter-of-fact exclamation. To suddenly see the biggest crocodile lift its head out of the water had taken Henry completely by surprise. Those were the only words he managed to shout. In an instant, the crocodile had grabbed Henry's left shoulder in its jaws. It pulled him underwater quickly like lightning. The immense pressure from a bite force of over 4,000 psi seized Henry, crushing his chest and neck. Henry was fastened snugly into the cockpit of his kayak. Ben and Chris watched in abject terror as the upturned kayak shook and tumbled above the water for a few agonizing seconds. Then the kayak was pulled downwards and out of sight. Moments later, the red plastic boat bobbed back up to the surface and righted itself. The cockpit was empty. Henry was nowhere to be seen. Henry was likely to have been taken to the bottom of the river where the crocodile began its feast, knocking the air from his lungs, disorientating him with sharp twists and rolls in an attempt to drown its prey. Mercifully, Henry likely passed out from the immense compression on his body before being taken down under. Judging by the size of its head, The crocodile was estimated to be about 15 feet long, weighing in excess of 2,000 pounds. Ben and Chris made a mad dash for it. Paddling with all their might, they churned through the green Lukuga River. Frantically, they made their way to the riverside village of Kabeamaji. Firing their kayaks at the riverbank, they leapt out and ran into the village, shouting for help. The locals fled in a mad panic. The two white men donning life jackets and helmets had taken them completely by surprise. But when everyone had calmed down, Ben and Chris managed to ask for a motorboat to go and look for Henry. The villagers shuffled uneasily and shook their heads. They told them that they no longer set foot on the river because in the last 5 years alone, 7 of them had been taken by the crocodiles, simply plucked from the decks of their boats. Ben and Chris dashed onto a nearby bridge, desperately looking upstream for their fallen friend. The entire village, some 200 people, followed them. Then they saw something. From around the corner, something floated into view, a black paddle, and then Henry's red kayak bobbed up and down on the river, floating closer and closer, and then passing under the bridge, right beneath Ben and Chris's feet. It was immaculate. No sign of a struggle, no scratches, no cracks, no blood. Henry was never seen again. Sensing something wasn't right, Henry's girlfriend logged onto Facebook. Her heart skipped a beat as messages of condolence for Henry appeared on her screen. This couldn't be happening. This must be some kind of mistake. They were supposed to be meeting soon. He was nearing the end of his expedition, his very last expedition. Distraught and devastated, Henry's girlfriend still journeyed to the Ugandan bar on New Year's Eve, where they were planning on meeting. Through the dimmed lighting and steady bass beat of the music, she searched the hazy dance floor for Henry, still hoping upon hope that she would see that dazzling, confident smile pop up from the crowds. The clock struck 12, and Henry did not show up for the toast. Unfortunately, he received an animal sentence. In today's chilling episode, an elderly woman's peaceful walk with her dog by a serene lake in Florida turns into a nightmare. Despite the alligator being nearly double her size, she bravely steps between the predator and her beloved pet. What follows is one of the most gruesome alligator attacks in Florida's history. This is the horrifying final minutes of Gloria Surge, devoured by a massive gator. Welcome to Animal Sentence. Florida is notorious worldwide for its alligators, creatures that lurk in nearly every freshwater body in the state. With an estimated 1.2 million alligators, their presence is so vast that encounters with humans are almost inevitable. Since 1948, there have been over 450 reported attacks, and this number continues to grow, particularly when people unwittingly bring their small pets into the alligator's domain. While we often hear heartwarming tales of animals saving humans, whales shielding swimmers from sharks, dogs defending their owners from danger, Florida's alligators remind us of a darker reality, where the tables can turn in the most horrifying ways. What most people fail to realize is that humans will usually do the same for their pets, even to their own peril. Many pet owners would do anything for their animals, and there are stories across the world of people going above and beyond for their beloved furry friends. Humans are surprisingly ready to risk their lives for their pets, and some have even made the ultimate sacrifice in the hopes of saving their tiny family members. The Floridian retirement complex known as Spanish Lakes hit the headlines in 2023 for all the wrong reasons. These retirement homes prided themselves on keeping their residents happy and active, with a wide range of activities for them to pick from, including swimming and golf. In addition, they boast 24 lakes on their property for the residents to sail on or simply walk around during their daily activities. While these lakes were created to help the mental and physical health of the people living there, they never thought that something could be living in them. something that was waiting to snack on some retirees. In February 2023, Gloria Serge had been living at Spanish Lakes for some time. She knew the area very well and had a few friends within the small community in Florida, where they would all keep an eye on each other. Despite the people that she knew, her favorite companion was undoubtedly her small dog named Trooper. He had been living with her since she moved into the complex, and she enjoyed being able to take him for walks in such a beautifully scenic place, something that she was rarely able to do when she lived alone. After her husband died, she decided that it would be best for her to move in around other people, rather than live in the isolation that widowhood tends to accompany. She was grateful to have such a well-behaved dog to keep her company during her days, and was excited to take him out on that fateful day. Although they say that a breath of fresh air is good for you, Gloria sadly didn't know what awaited her as she set out for her daily dog walk. That afternoon, Gloria left her apartment as usual, with Trooper running ahead of her on the leash. She planned to walk around the lakes nearest her home, as she decided that they would be the most beautiful, and it would be easy for her to return home if she started to feel tired. She set off, determined to make it around the first lake, taking in her surroundings and feeling particularly happy to be living amongst such stunning natural scenery. She waved to some of her neighbors as she got closer to the water's edge, looking across to the other side and readying herself for the long walk ahead. In her increasingly old age, she had been finding it more and more difficult to complete an entire lap of the lake. But Trooper's enthusiasm and love of being outdoors fueled her to try harder each day. As she slowly made her way around the lake, she had no idea that she was being watched from a distance. 100 feet away from her, on the other side of the water, a 10-foot alligator had spotted the pair walking close to the edge and decided that one of them would make an easy target. It clambered into the murky water and began to stalk Gloria and Trooper, who continued with their walk, oblivious to what was watching them. It stealthily approached them, but hung back just enough to stay out of sight, watching the pensioner and her dog as they continued their leisurely afternoon and waited for its best moment, and then leapt from the water trying to grab onto Trooper and drag him into the water. But Gloria wouldn't allow it. She now had to decide who would survive this attack, her dog or herself, as Gloria saw the huge beast run at her from the water. She knew what she had to do. Her tiny dog was oblivious to the attack as she swung him out of the way of the alligator's jaws and threw him away from danger. But they weren't safe yet. Seeing that its initial target had been pulled away from its grasp, the reptile turned on Gloria instead, seizing her by the leg and dragging her to the ground. She screamed out for help as she was quickly dragged into the water, waving her arms desperately to catch the attention of any of her nearby neighbors. The huge alligator had a firm grip on her leg and gave no hint of letting go while she was still alive. She knew she only had a limited amount of time before it would be too late. Trooper was barking viciously on the grass as he watched his owner slip under the water, but there was nothing that such a small dog could do to help. Ultimately, Gloria had saved her dogs by sacrificing her own. One of her neighbors, 76-year-old Carol Thomas, overheard the commotion and saw Gloria being pulled into the water by an alligator nearly twice her size. Panicking, the retiree quickly called the police. Carol ran outside while holding the phone and grabbed a pole from her garden as she tried to help. When she got there, she felt as though her heart had stopped, as the woman in the water was no longer moving, only floating on the surface as she was being tugged and pulled by the alligator. Carol began to maneuver the pole towards Gloria, hoping against hope that she could grab it and then be pulled to safety, but sadly it was already too late. Gloria was dead, and the alligator quickly snatched away her body, leaving Carol to watch as the body was pulled under the murky water. When the authorities arrived, there was a crowd of people around the lake as other people living in the complex came to learn of the terrible event that had happened on their doorsteps. They were terrified. They walked the same path every day and were thinking about how it could have been any one of them. They had no idea there was even an alligator in their lake and were shocked that no one had ever noticed such a large beast sharing the same area as them. Shortly after her death, Gloria's body was recovered from the water, her injuries extensive across her entire body as the alligator attempted to begin to eat her before she was brought out of the water. There was only one thing left to do: capture the alligator. Wildlife experts were sent to find the animal and bring it from the lake so that they could decide what to do with it. After a long search, they found it hiding at the bottom of the lake, its belly full. After it was captured, the experts were able to measure the massive animal at 10 feet long. After measuring the gator, they took it away to be killed, as it was decided that an animal that size could not continue living in the lake, certainly not after it had begun to attack the residents of the retirement complex. The owners of the complex then began an extermination effort to make sure that their residents were safe. No one would want to leave their family members in their care if they knew there was a risk of them suffering the same fate as Gloria. They were able to clear as many of the lakes as possible and relocated all of the other reptiles that they found. Unfortunately for Gloria, she was the third alligator victim in Florida in the last 6 months, leading authorities to warn locals to stay away from large bodies of water, especially when walking with their pets. Gloria proved to everyone what people would do to save their animals. Luckily for Trooper, he survived the whole ordeal and was eventually sent to live with Gloria's family. His life was saved from the jaws of an alligator by a woman who gave her all until she received an animal sentence. A deadly sentence.